And with more on the Sens, we're back with Craig. And Craig, despite the loss, the Senators have won 7 of their last 11. And they have this habit, and it's somewhat of a frustrating one for Ottawa Senators fans, where, they finish the season so well when they're way out of a playoff spot, and then they're not able to build on it the next season. So how do the Senators avoid history moving forward to next year?
Well, what I would suggest, Mark, is maybe they can learn from the history of Craig Button. Maybe Steve Staios can take Craig Button's history as a manager with the Calgary Flames and use that as a guideline. And where I'll start with is the goaltending. We traded for Roman Turek in 2001, and we thought we had an answer to our goaltending challenges. We signed him to a long-term contract. And certainly, we had every belief that Roman Turek could be that player. Well, he wasn't that player. And despite the fact that we brought in a new coach in Daryl Sutter and he worked with him, I left. And then Daryl Sutter made the decision. He said, you know what? The goaltending isn't good enough. And so despite having a long-term contract, Daryl went out and got Mika Kiprasov. They're retiring his number. I think it was a pretty darn good move for Daryl Sutter and the Calgary Flames, because they also went to the Stanley Cup final that year before losing in Game 7. Further to that, Mark, there was also a lot of good young players in the Calgary Flames system. Just like there's lots of good young players that the Senators have drafted that they believe in, and they've watched them grow and they've watched them develop. But the mix isn't working. How it's currently constructed, how the group is playing together, I think is clear, can't be successful. And remember, I'm saying can't be successful. And that's exactly what I found in Calgary. Corey Stillman was a really good player, but we needed help in the center ice position, so we traded Corey Stillman for Craig Conroy. Then, after that, Derek Morris, a drafted player, really good young defender. We traded him for Chris Drury and Stefan Yell because we really wanted not only to change the mix, but we wanted to get strong in one significant area. Up the center ice was something that we had to do. We had other young players there, and those weren't the only moves we made, but we had to look at changing the mix of players, and we did. And that became really instrumental. It doesn't mean that Corey Stillman and Derek Morris weren't good players. It doesn't mean that the Ottawa Senators don't have good players. What it means is the good players that they have now, the good young players they have right now, aren't getting the job done. Until the players change, which will change the complexion of the team, I don't think this team will move forward. That's where Steve Staios has to put his efforts, as well as hiring a coach. We also were able to hire Daryl Sutter, and we saw what he did in his time there and coming into Calgary. I think those are the things that Steve Staios has to look at. Little history lesson that Steve Staios can apply to his own situation with the Senators.
All right, got to learn from history. And for the Ottawa Senators, that run in 2017 seems like a long time ago, so hopefully they're able to. Meanwhile, you talked about goaltending. That's going to be a huge topic for the Olympics in a couple of years. You came out with Team Canada's roster. As it stands right now, we're looking forward to hearing from that a little bit later in the show.